When we think of Vikings, we often picture longships, raids, and freezing winters, but we rarely think about how they stayed warm inside their homes. The truth is, Vikings rarely relied on fire alone to survive the brutal Scandinavian winters. Fires were precious, fuel was limited, and constant stoking was impossible. Instead, they developed a system where the architecture, materials, and placement of their homes kept people warm, almost effortlessly. This was not luck. It was intentional design, passed down through generations, and it still offers lessons for modern survivalists and historical enthusiasts alike. Why Vikings treated heat as something to conserve rather than create endlessly. The central insight of Viking warmth was that heat is precious, and wasting it is deadly. Fire could warm a room, but it was a temporary solution, and wood was a finite resource. Vikings designed their homes to retain heat from every available source, from the sun to animal bodies, human activity, and even residual fire heat. They understood that conserving warmth required thinking in systems rather than moments. For modern homeowners, this translates to checking where heat escapes before trying to add more energy. Drafts, thin walls, high ceilings, and unused space are the real enemies. How Viking homes used the ground itself to stabilize temperature. Many Viking longhouses were partially sunk into the earth. This was a deliberate choice. The soil maintains a relatively stable temperature year-round. In winter, the ground is warmer than the air, and in summer, it is cooler. Sinking floors and anchoring walls into the earth created natural insulation and protected the house from wind. Modern applications of this principle are straightforward. Insulating foundations, creating earth-bermed exterior walls, or using basements as primary winter living spaces all mimic Viking logic and dramatically reduce energy loss. Why Viking walls were more important than the fire itself. Viking walls were thick, heavy, and layered. Timber frames were filled with turf, moss, clay, and straw. These layers blocked wind and trapped air inside, slowing the escape of heat. Turf walls, in particular, were remarkably effective at holding warmth while protecting against storms. Today, we can apply the same principle by prioritizing dense insulation over simply increasing heating. Heavy walls, thermal mass, and draft proofing often make a home warmer than a high-output furnace alone. How sunlight became a silent heat source. Even in the far north, Vikings harnessed the sun's energy. Longhouses were oriented to capture low winter sunlight, which was absorbed by dark floors, hearthstones, and walls, then slowly released throughout the day. Modern applications are simple. Place thermal mass, like stone or brick, in sunlit areas to store and radiate solar warmth. Even a small amount of sunlight captured intelligently can reduce the need for artificial heating. Why did animals contribute to heating homes? Well, Vikings often kept their livestock either under or right next to their living quarters. The body heat from these animals would, rise naturally through the floors and walls, adding a bit of extra warmth without the need for any additional fuel. In modern times, we don't usually house animals indoors, but honestly, the basic principle still applies to any clustered heat source. Kitchens, compost piles, greenhouses, and even mechanical rooms all generate warmth that can be efficiently redistributed to living spaces. So, how did Viking hearths work with stone to store heat? When Vikings did burn fire, they made sure to burn smart. Their hearths were low and wide, surrounded by stone, which would soak up the heat. And when the fire finally died down, the stone kept radiating warmth for hours afterward. This principle underlies masonry heaters, modern rocket mass heaters, and even simple stone placements near stoves. One well-managed fire could warm a longhouse all night, dramatically conserving fuel. Why compact spaces and low ceilings preserved warmth? Viking interiors were deliberately compact. Rooms were small, ceilings were low, and unused spaces were minimized. This concentrated warmth where people actually lived and slept. Modern applications include zoning your home, closing off unused rooms, and using curtains or partitions to reduce heated volume. Concentrated heat lasts longer than dispersed heat, a lesson Viking homes make perfectly clear. Viking ventilation was, honestly, pretty ingenious. It kept warmth inside without causing rot or disease. Even with those thick walls and heavy insulation, Viking homes were never sealed up completely. Instead, smoke holes and carefully controlled airflow allowed stale air and moisture to escape, all while minimizing heat loss. Warm air would exit high, while cool air entered low. Modern homes often either overventilate or get sealed up way too tightly. But passive ventilation, where air moves slowly, preserves heat while still maintaining healthy conditions, just like the Vikings figured out centuries ago. So, why does the Viking approach still outperform a lot of modern heating solutions? Well, Vikings survived by thinking in systems. They didn't burn more fuel, they simply wasted none. Their homes were designed around conservation, thermal mass, and smart airflow. And honestly, these principles still work today because the laws of physics haven't changed. Applying these concepts today can make your home warmer, cheaper to run, and a whole lot more resilient to power outages or fuel shortages. If you appreciate the ingenuity of the past and want practical ways to bring ancient survival wisdom into modern life, go ahead and subscribe to Relic Logic. Share this with fellow history enthusiasts and help keep these lessons alive. Viking warmth wasn't magic. It was method and, well, it still has power today.